Thanksgiving Eve, we decided to do Vikings on Thanksgiving. I'm sure we got some good ones. I'm sure we had some bad ones. Um, sorry, guys. So, thoughts, Tony?
Uh, Vikings have played on Thanksgiving. He's had some pretty memorable games on Thanksgiving in their history. Um, the first year was what 69. The first time they played on Thanksgiving, and they shut out the Lions 27-0 on national TV. Um, that was when the whole country was starting to realize what 40 for 60 was, and they got a good look at that the Purple People Eaters that game. Even if you really couldn't see the players for the snow because it ended up being a snowstorm in the middle of the game. The weather was just bad, and but that was the Vikings beat the Lions that day 27-0. Defense had 9 sacks of Greg Landry. Just it was one of those classic old school football games, and that was also a game where Jim Marshall got an interception and was being tackled, and he lateraled it to Alan Page, who scored a touchdown. So that game. But yeah, that was one of the most memorable ones. And it was against Detroit, and it was 27-0, as I said.
Rolling start.
Vikings, let's win this game. Score Vikings, honor your name. Go get that first down, then get a touchdown. Rock 'em, sock 'em, fight, 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 fight. Go Vikings, run out the score. You'll hear us yell for more. Vikings, score Vikings, let's go.
Sorry if this show doesn't have the same production value that I usually carry with it, but I have COVID, so I'm fighting through it, but we'll get through this. So, all right. So, yeah, I mean, there's all, I mean, there was also the last year's game. That was the first time they hosted one, right?
Yes, first time they ever had a home game on Thanksgiving. And they beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
Most of their Thanksgiving games have been. We've had what 3 or 4 in Detroit, maybe 3 in Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was in '87. It was our first trip to Dallas.
Yeah, and that one was memorable because we went into overtime.
Yeah, they
Darren
scored
Nelson was the star of that game. He ran for, I believe, 100 and some odd yards and 2 touchdowns. He had the game winner in overtime. That was a game where Tommy Kramer started. Wade Wilson came in and finished. But that was for the Cowboys. Danny White came into the game, and I forget who he relieved, but he brought the Cowboys back, and the Cowboys almost pulled it off, except in overtime, Darren Nelson with the game winner.
Yeah, there was 82 points combined in that game.
Yep.
It was 44-38. It was see, they featured two teams that combined. Mike Renfo's third touchdown catch of the afternoon in the second or fourth quarter ended a furious Cowboys comeback that saw them force overtime. The game tied 38-38. The Minnesota eventually prevailed on a Darren Nelson overtime.
Yeah, it was a good game. It was a classic game.
And then their next time they played, I believe, as they went back again the next year, so '88, they played back-to-back years.
Yeah, they went to Detroit and shut them out 23-0.
Yeah, the Lions probably wish they had Vikings stayed at home though. The touchdown runs by Alfred Anderson. We talked about him on last week's show. Both of you and I loved him. And 3 Chuck Nelson field goals and a suffocating performance by the Vikings defense led to another shutout. This time by a score of 23-0 at the Silverdome.
That game was unique because the Viking defense they were number 1 in the league at the time. The Detroit Lions didn't get past midfield until like the middle of the fourth quarter.
The Lions had 3 first downs the whole game.
Yeah,
60 yards, 6-0 the whole game.
Yep. And their starting quarterback was Rusty Hilger.
Who?
Yeah, the former Raider Rusty Hilger was their starting quarterback. Yeah, but that game was dominated from the Vikings from start to finish, and it was all defense. All defense.
Yeah.
So right up until then, the Vikings are what, 3-0 on Thanksgiving?
Well, yeah, because you got the first one, like you said, in '69. That was actually at Tiger Stadium.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a pretty game, as you said. The only teams who could muster 9 first downs, a combined 329 yards offense in the game. It was 27-0. Minnesota improved to 10-1 that year after winning that game.
Yep.
But yeah, so they're 3-0 their first 3 games on Thanksgiving. So then had to wait a little bit. They didn't get another crack at the Lions or Thanksgiving until 1995. This time the Lions got a measure of revenge.
It became that game was a shootout.
Yeah.
Vikings fell 44-38.
Scott Mitchell and Warren Moon were the quarterbacks.
Yep, Scott Mitchell and Warren Moon.
Scott Mitchell threw for 410 yards, 4 touchdowns. Warren Moon threw for 384 and 3 passing touchdowns.
Yep.
Barry Sanders carried the ball 24 times for 138 yards, including the 50-yard touchdown. Now, if you guys have never, some of the young guys in here, I don't know if there's any in here right now, but young guys watching this show, if you ever want to see a great running back, go back and watch some of the Detroit Lions videos of Barry Sanders.
He's got a special coming up, I guess.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, bye Barry.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know, Sarah. I haven't been talking all day. I've been trying to save my voice just for the show. That's why we didn't do the post-game show or anything like that. So. And then, they lost that one. So right now that beats them 3-1. And then the next one, as we all know, was the Randy Moss coming out party.
The Randy Moss game. As far as I'm concerned, 98, that's all Randy. That's the Randy Moss game. It was basically Randy Moss against the Dallas Cowboys, and Randy Moss won.
Deion Sanders faking an injury.
Yeah, he did. He did fake an injury. He did. But you know what? He got lit up the next year anyway. So it was just a delayed. It was just something that was inevitable. But yeah, he got lit up the next year in the playoffs and on Monday night. So, but that game will always be the Randy Moss game. But you know what? Leroy Horde looked good in that game.
It's funny. The article says the good news for the Cowboys fans was that they limited star rookie receiver Randy Moss to 3 catches on the afternoon. The bad news is that all 3 of those were a 51-yard, a 56-yard, and a 58, and another 56-yard. 3 catches, 163 yards, and 3 catch scores. That was 46-36.
Yeah, that was it. The score was closer than the game actually was.
Yeah, that game, that was like that. That was kind of like the Randy Moss Monday night game in Green Bay when it was raining,
right?
And that score ended up being close because the Packers got 2 late touchdowns, so it didn't look as bad. It was kind of the same thing in that game. But yeah, that game. I mean, I'm sure the chat. I mean, I know Sarah was talking about it earlier. That's her. That's her memory of.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody as a Viking fan You remember that because it was Randy Moss's game.
Yeah.
You know, and Randy was there to take revenge on the Cowboys for passing on him.
And I remember in my family, we used to go to for Thanksgiving. My uncle's best friend growing up, he was pretty much part of the family. Well, we would go to their house for Thanksgiving and they were Cowboy fans.
Yeah.
So and I was so I was there and I was like, of course they're talking all their crap like they always do because they're Cowboy fans. I just remember watching that game, and I just remember not saying anything.
Yeah, I spent that Thanksgiving with Cowboy fans too. They were sick of me after that game. They were literally sick of me after that game. Hey, can you pull up the comments? George Blunt had one.
Which one?
Yeah, Jerry Ball did play in that game, George. The one where he pancaked Aikman was on Monday Night Football in '99, and Aikman left with a concussion.
I think if any of us got pancaked by Jerry Ball, we would be with a concussion.
Right. Yeah, he literally just fell on him. I think he fumbled. I think Troy fumbled the snap or something. And right off that nose tackle spot, here came Jerry Ball, and he landed right on top of him. And there's a lot of dead weight to be landing on top of you. And
well, he was what 350, right?
I think they're being generous by saying 350. He might have been a little bigger than that.
He moved pretty well too for his size.
Yeah, he was pretty mobile. He had been in the league a few years, even up till then. But yeah, he was very mobile for a nose tackle. Very mobile.
Hello, Mama. I love you.
Hello, Mom.
As you can see, I don't give you. I feel the same I did yesterday and the day before. But she's like, why aren't you giving me daily updates? I said, because I don't feel like being on my phone. I don't feel like talking to nobody.
Yeah, that 98 game, yeah, that's Randy. And he ended up, I believe in 2000, they went back to Dallas for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the next game. Let's see, that was 98. It took place in Dallas 2 seasons later.
Yeah,
2000. It wasn't as memorable. It did have its moments. In particular, it featured the most ridiculous catch I've ever seen on a football field. You have your Odell Beckham catches and whatever else, but I think this is the Chris Carter catch he's talking about? How the heck? Yeah, yeah, that's right. Moss caught. This is the one that Moss caught on the sideline and got his feet barely in.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, and they put the Vikings up 27-9, and they end up winning 27-15.
What happened, and what also happened in that game? Robert Smith had a long TD run. That helped. Robert Smith had one of his better games of that year. Emmitt Smith got knocked out of the game. He suffered a neck injury to the point that he was literally carted off the field. It was pretty scary because he didn't move.
Yeah,
and it was just you don't want to see that happen to any player, especially.
Was that game close until he got hurt? I remember there was a
game the Cowboys had started making moves, and they started to get back into the game, and then Emmett got hurt, and that stalled it right there. Then it's like the air went out of him.
Because I remember, I'm not sure if that was a game or not, but I do remember a Vikings-Cowboys game where they were struggling stopping Emmitt Smith, and as soon as Emmitt Smith went out of the game, the Vikings.
Oh, that was a Monday night game the year before.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a Monday night game, and then Emmett and Troy both got hurt, and then that's when the Vikings were able to take the game from them. So
Yeah, so the Vikings haven't played on Thanksgiving a lot.
no, they have. It's very brief, very brief.
You would think that they would play more, um, seeing how the division rival.
Well, Detroit usually they're gonna and Detroit has been in the league longer, so they're usually gonna play. Usually, the Packers or the Bears more, because that's just the way the rivalry is. Like they're playing the Packers tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a couple of years there, and the Cowboys. Now, the thing with the Cowboys is, I remember a couple of years in the 70s where the Cowboys didn't play on Thanksgiving. 1 year on Thanksgiving, it was the Buffalo Bills and the St. Louis Cardinals, the second game. It wasn't the Cowboys, but it's been the Cowboys. With the Cowboys, it was usually the Redskins / Commanders.
Yeah.
So
a lot of that's my mama's team, by the way. But I think the Vikings have only played 9 times. I think.
Yeah, it's not much. I think when we played in 2000, when did we play again?
Well, they played. So after 2000, it looks like it was. They had to wait 16 more years. Looks like. So they went from 2000 to 2016 without playing on Thursday, without playing on Thanksgiving, and in 2016, that's when they played the Lions, and it was the Lions 16-13. That was Teddy Bridgewater suffered a knee injury just before the start of the season, and Sam Bradford.
That was the one where Bradford threw the interception at the end of the game.
Yes, the Vikings owned a 13-10 lead in the fourth quarter.
That was Thanksgiving?
But Thanksgiving Day in Detroit, it was the second meeting of the year between the two clubs. Minnesota owned a 13-10 lead late in the fourth quarter. The Lions would not. The Lions was 1:49 left to play. 48-yard field goal by Matt Prater. Overtime.
Okay.
Overtime appeared ineligible. The Vikings quarterback Sam Bradford got the ball at his own 25-yard line and had the ball in the closing minutes. On the third play of the drive, he was picked off by Darius Slay.
Yeah.
Who returned it to the Vikings 20-yard line. The Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford took a knee and Prater nailed a 40-yard field goal.
Yeah, I remember that.
But that was a bad season for Minnesota.
Yeah, that was.
Stuff like that happened all year long for that team that season.
Yeah.
So that's. So I mean, they have a winning record, so I guess that's good. But
was that the last time they played on?
No, they played the year after.
Oh, with Case Keenum.
Let's see. So 2017.
Case Keenum.
Since this was the year that began with Bradford at quarterback, it would soon have Case Keenum behind center. The Vikings won 30-23 in this game.
That was a game where we tried it. We had a field goal which would have sealed it. We went to attempt a field goal. The field goal was blocked and returned for a touchdown. But the flag on the play was against the Lions for encroachment. They jumped off sides.
Yeah, it was. They had a 20-3 lead in the second quarter.
Yeah, and it slowly dwindled away.
Latavius Murray gave the Vikings a 27-10 advantage early in the third quarter with a 2-yard run. This was another one of those, because it was Mike Zimmer. The game was close when it shouldn't have been close.
Right.
The Vikings had over 400 yards offense. Offense.
Yeah, and that was a game where Zimmer didn't make adjustments. He didn't make adjustments, and the Lions took advantage of it. Yep. And that was the last, and then they played New England on Thanksgiving.
And then excuse me, sorry. And then the next one, is
last year.
Last year, the 2022 game.
Yeah, last year.
33 to 26.
Yep. And we already know what Kenny Nwangu wins that game for us then.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we've had some really good games on Thanksgiving. What is it? 2 losses?
So let me see. So go back to so that's 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. You got 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, 6-1, 7-1, 8-1. So that they lost to So it looks like 8-2.
They're like 8-2
Yeah, they lost to the Lions
twice.
That's it.
Yep. So
Yeah.
it's not too bad. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm glad we don't play on Thanksgiving. That's one day where I can just sit down and relax and watch football without stressing about my team. So I don't even complain about it. But
Because
the few times we have been on there, though, this team is balled out. They have.
It's a good day if your team wins, but it turns into a crappy day if they lose.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. But yeah, that's our Thanksgiving history. That's a short history and a brief history, but it's a positive history. Some of the best games were on Thanksgiving in Viking history. Randy Moss in '98, the Purple People Eaters in '69. Even in '88 we shut them out. I mean, they're for the most part good memories.
Yeah.
For the most part, they are good memories. So, and there's other holidays the Vikings have played on.
Well, you got the playoff game, 71 on Christmas.
Yeah, and I still remember that one because my dad was pissed the whole day. And then that was one of the cases where they didn't tell.
I know people say football's not life and you're supposed to, you're supposed to get over it, whatever. That's why I kind of think like they should be like NFL games should be played on Christmas, because if you do have like a diehard father or whatever like that who gets so mad every time the team loses, the rest of the day for the family is just going to be crap.
Well, and the thing was, they usually didn't schedule games on Christmas. They did that year. I don't know why.
Yeah.
The NFL tried to avoid that years later. Now they're scheduling games whenever. But yeah, nobody in Minnesota was a happy camper because of the way they lost, and and they were heavily favored. They were favored against that Cowboy team.
It was the first time in NFL history that a game was scheduled on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
The 11-3 Vikings, 2 years removed from the Super Bowl appearance, hosted 11-3 Cowboys at Met Stadium. Despite outgaining Dallas 311 to 183, the Vikings turned the ball over 5 times. Isn't that the story of the Vikings?
Yeah, they turned the ball over 5 times. I think
2 interceptions.
Bob Lee started the game and threw 3 interceptions, I believe.
There was 2 interceptions apiece by Quazzo and Lee.
Okay, 2 apiece.
They were unable to climb out of a 20-3 lead deficit from the turnovers.
Yep. And that loss led to the return of Fran Tarkenton.
I can see that.
Yeah, that loss led to the Vikings knew they needed a quarterback. And
now that was also, they don't talk about that Vikings game because the other game that happened was
Chiefs and Dolphins.
When it double overtime and caused late dinners everywhere, and all these women were going crazy because their husbands wouldn't come and eat because everything was the ovens, the turkeys, and all the Christmas dinners were late. Because that game went to double overtime.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the one that everybody remembers. That one.
Bro.
And then the only other time I think, 89 we played on Christmas, Monday Night Football.
Yeah, 89, the Vikings were also part of the first regular season game on Christmas Day in NFL history. It was a Monday Night Football game at the Metrodome in Week 16 between the 96 Vikings and the 8-7 Bengals. The Vikings got out to a 19 lead and held on with Wade Wilson besting reigning MVP Boomer Esiason. The win gave the Vikings the NFC Central Championship, but of course they'd go on to be routed by the 49ers in the first round. But that was the Greg Novoselsky catch, right?
Yep, that's Novoselsky. That was Novoselsky. That win put the Vikings in the playoffs, knocked the Packers out, and it also, the loss by the Bengals, put the Steelers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, but what I remember most from that day was they announced it. They had announced either at halftime or during the game that former Yankees manager Billy Martin had died in a car crash.
Yeah.
And I remember them talking about it. But that's what I remember most from that game.
I had to. I wasn't allowed to. Because I remember that because I can remember. I that's like for some reason that maybe because it was on Christmas, I don't know, but that to me, that play sticks out.
Yeah,
the over the coat. I just remember the over the shoulder catch in the back of the end zone, the tight end,
Novoselsky,
number 85, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Novoselsky
made that play, and I just remember everybody just going nuts in the Metrodome on that.
Well, he was barely in bounds.
Yeah.
And then when he was in bounds and he had to dive for it. I thought they were going to call him out of bounds, but they let it go. I was like, oh my God. But that was one of those nail biters. Although Chris Dolman did get, how many sacks did Dolman get that game?
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Because he was one away from tying Mark Gastineau's record. He ended up with 21 on the year.
That's funny. Yeah, that what I was just reading was a brief recap of the game.
Yeah, I think he had like 2 or 3 sacks that game. Missed it by one, to be honest.
Yeah, I know there was a that man, he was so good.
Oh yeah. And he was going up against that game. He was going up against Anthony Munoz.
Yeah.
And he still managed. I believe he still managed to get 2 or 3 sacks. So that's how good he was. But that was Christmas. Do we? What other?
There's a couple more on Christmas. There's a couple more on Christmas that we played on. We got the Ravens.
What year was that?
2005. That was 30-23 Ravens.
Oh, 30-23 knocked us out of the playoffs.
Yeah, 16 years later, the Vikings played on Christmas Day for the third time in their history. It was a Sunday night in Baltimore, with the 8-6 Vikings needing a win to keep their playoff hopes alive against the 5-9 Ravens. The game went back and forth through 3 quarters, but Kyle Bowler and the Ravens pulled away in the 4th quarter. Brad Johnson threw touchdowns to Travis Taylor and Jermaine Wiggins.
Yeah, it was a close game, but they beat us in the end. Week later, Mike Tice got fired.
Yeah, and that was that loss. It says right here it was that was the infamous Love Boat season. And if you guys haven't seen that episode, go back and watch it. It's hilarious.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that was that season.
then 2020 Vikings versus Saints.
Oh, that's the game where Kamara scored 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, that one wasn't. That was that was ugly.
That was a joke. That was a joke. I would have moved on from Zimmer after that game, big time. I would have moved on. Yeah, that game.
Yeah, that was 53 to it was 52 to 33.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Alvin Kamara had 22 carries, 155 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 6 touchdowns.
And the Vikings got 2 picks from Breeze. I think that's what let them.
Yeah, but he couldn't do anything with it. Couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara, I think, scored every touchdown for the Saints in that game. Irv Smith actually had a touchdown in that game.
Oh, wow.
Irv Smith had 2 touchdowns in that game.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the third quarter.
Wow.
The Vikings, I remember the Vikings got it in that game. The Vikings got it back to 33 to 45 with 2 minutes left to go in the game.
Yeah, but that defense that year was just horrible.
And then the Saints scored again.
Yeah, that defense was horrible.
So it looks like the Vikings would rather play on Thanksgiving than Christmas.
I'd actually rather play on Thanksgiving and Christmas if I was a player. I think there's one holiday I wouldn't want to play on as Christmas. You know.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I guess I never had the opportunity, so I can't say. But I mean, I guess that would be one way you could look at it.
Right.
You get to spend time with your family on Christmas more. You kind of expect it, I guess. You always know there's going to be games on Thanksgiving, so you kind of
You just you know the games are always going to be there. You're just kind of like, okay, who's going to get to draw this year to play on it? So
yeah.
But anybody got any questions for us? That's in the chat.
Yeah, it was a short.
It's a short history.
Yeah,
it's positive. It's good that we're short because we've got Ketch is not feeling the best. So
turducken champions, yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that was the conversation they were having. Yeah, so I guess George has seen that Bye Bye Barry.
I have heard it's good. My friend saw it. He said it's pretty good. It kind of explains what happened and everything. And we already knew it. Yeah, they have high schools still play on Thanksgiving.
You got to be good to play on Thanksgiving, though.
We've here in Minnesota, when it's Thanksgiving weekend, we have like our championships, call it the Prep Bowl. And they used to play it at the Metrodome all the time. Now they play it at US Bank Stadium. So
in Florida, we're only in the second round of the playoffs.
Well, you guys are done in what, December?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're done in November. By time December starts, it's actually basketball season now for high schools.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you had up here. You had to be real good to play on Thanksgiving or near Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, who's the best defensive and offensive player? It's subject to the person.
Joey Brown or Randy Moss.
Yeah, and for me, it would be I can't even say one defensive player. I gotta say four. The Purple People Eaters, and my offensive player is Chuck Foreman.
Yeah.
It all depends on the person and what era that they grew up in and who they watched. But for many, it's even my age, it's Randy Moss on offense. So
For me, as someone who did not grow up from Florida, not grow up in Minnesota, who's not from Minnesota, who's only been in Minnesota maybe 3 times, uh, it was my dad was watching a game on TV, and I saw the Vikings helmet, and I'm like, that's the coolest helmet I've ever seen in my life. So since then, I've pretty much been a Vikings fan, and of course, you know, they were good watching, and they had some good teams, and then I saw Joey Browner hit people, and I'm like, oh yeah, he made me want to be safety, but then I realized I was too fat to be safety. so, uh, so Joey Browner was actually, other than the helmet, Joey Browner was probably my first step into loving the Vikings, and of course, then again, Randy as well. But
I live in the Twin Cities, born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota. So my dad introduced me to the Vikings. Up until then, I was really a baseball kid. I really liked baseball and was into the Twins. But once I guess watching the sport and then learning about the sport, but then watching the games with my dad, that's my best memory. That probably instilled me as a Viking fan. And that they had the Purple People Eaters. Those were the guys that I liked. So yeah, I had other favorites too. Like I like Dave Osborne. I like Ed White, Tinkeloff, Ryan Urie, Grady Alderman. I like guys like that. But yeah, that was my dad was the reason that I'm a big Vikings fan.
that's quite a big
Yeah,
consideration.
that's a very common answer for a lot of Viking fans.
And both our numbers should be retired, by the way.
Well, and I don't know. I think what's his name said he wanted to retire Randy's number. McCombs had made mention of it, but he sold the team. And he said if Randy ever left the team, he was going to retire the number. But he didn't, of course.
Because it doesn't cost the owner anything to retire the jersey, does it?
No, it doesn't cost the owner anything. But then you got to look at what you have for numbers that are retired, and it could be a shortage of numbers.
Well, not now, though. But they can wear any number they want, though.
Yeah, including 0, which looks retarded. Ryan Urie was one of the best. He got called for holding years later because they kind of changed the rules on holding. But I mean, the man was all pro 6 years straight. He's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he protected Tarkenton. Him and Ed White, that side of the line was the side that Chuck Foreman ran off of most of the time. And so he did his job. Now I know Urie didn't like Tarkenton, but yeah, later on he was good for at least a couple of holding penalties. He got called for holding a lot later on in years, but during his heyday, he was one of the best.
Yeah, I don't remember Ron Urie because my age, but I know he's one of the best.
Yeah, see, Luft. Here's the thing: when it comes to 0, why the NFL doesn't let the players wear 00? I don't understand that one. 00 looks a lot better than just plain 0. And if you're a lineman and you're wearing 0, that's not a good look, Marcus Davenport. That's not a good look. Sorry. 0 on a fat guy just don't look right. Big guy, if you're a lineman, you should wear lineman numbers.
Should be like between 50 to 70, then 90.
Right.
Offensive linemen usually don't wear 90, so that's usually strictly defense.
No, offensive linemen usually wear 50s, 60s, and 70s. D linemen wore 90s a lot. They started doing that because they started giving those lower numbers to the offensive linemen. But yeah, that was a good defensive line combo. And by the way, everybody, Millard and Randall did play together before Millard got hurt. John Randall was a rookie, so he did play with those guys. And then when they traded Millard, John Randall took over.
Yeah,
technically, Morpheus, if they're both in the Hall of Fame, but if you're going to retire that number 22, you retire it under Krause. You retire it under the guy who he should have had it retired. Actually, Paul Krause and Carl Eller were promised to have their numbers retired, and it didn't happen. And they were promised by Red McCombs, but it never happened. As soon as the last players were done wearing their numbers, at the time it was Chris Walsh and David Palmer. McCombs had made a verbal promise to those guys and said they were going to retire those numbers, and McCombs never did. So
I don't think 81's in use right now, is it?
Huh?
81's not in use right now, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's used. Oh my God.
His Nick News is 34. So 84, 86, and 87 are the tight ends. 18, 3, 17, 4.
Hey, can you bring up De Niro Jones's comment? I have Chuck Foreman over AD. Why? Chuck Foreman he could run and he could catch and he could block. But the best pure runner is Adrian Peterson. Adrian couldn't catch worth a damn. But the best pure runner was AD. Okay, 81's not in use, so they could technically retire it. I think the last person to wear it was BC Johnson.
Yeah, I was going to say BC Johnson was the last person to wear 81.
Yeah, I think BC was the last one, so they could retire that number.
Yeah,
which kind of shocking that they didn't.
You just put Carl. You could do it Carl Eller / Carter if you want to.
Right.
I don't think Anthony Carter was. I don't know. That's questionable whether Anthony Carter was good enough.
No. Good, but not good enough.
Right. Carl Eller definitely was.
Yeah, Eller is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when I talked to Bob Lertzema, I asked him seriously, what is keeping Jim Marshall out of the Hall of Fame? And Bob said, well, because to the national media, Jim was overshadowed by Carl Eller and Alan Page. That's the reason that he's been overshadowed, because of those two. Especially Carl Eller. Eller was the one that was the as Eller went, so went the line. It was like the two people that could get that line going or could turn a game around just by themselves were either Carl Eller or Alan Page. But that doesn't take away from how important Jim Marshall or Gary Larson or Doug Sutherland were on that D line. But to the national media, that's what's keeping Jim out of the Hall of Fame.
Spin Doctor, World Dervish. Wasn't he called the World Dervish by NFL Films?
Spin Doctor. He was a spin doctor.
Some people might disagree with you on the top two receivers, De Niro. Because he says Moss and Carter. Are you talking Anthony or are you talking Chris?
He's talking Chris. Here's the thing. Now, Moss and Carter, Okay. Number 3. Oh hell, I'm gonna put his name in there. Sammy White. He did the dirty work that Ahmad Rashad wouldn't do, which meant running over the middle.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, Sarah. 80 is retired.
Don't get Tony on his soapbox.
Yeah, don't get me started on Marshall not being in the Hall of Fame. That's
a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. You know what? And now that I'm reading this from Luft, I'm thinking, guess what? If you're on the practice squad, don't give him a number. Don't give him a number.
I mean, they can wear the number in practice. So
yeah, but
they don't
give him a
actually.
number. Yeah, don't give him a number. Bob Swede, yes, I remember Bob Green.
But the thing about it is, though, Dave, is that with anybody being able to, except for offensive linemen, with anybody else being to wear any number they want, pretty much, that really doesn't. I mean, the
players are picking their numbers. That's why you've got defensive linemen wearing single digits.
Yeah, so I don't think that back before they changed the rules that it would be a problem. Yeah, but if the Vikings don't retire 80 more uniforms, 84 has got to be one of the ones, and if they then they can decide between 22 and 81. But 84 is by far and away that number has to be retired. That's got to be the next number retired.
Yeah.
There's no reason why what's his name can't switch from 84 to 81 if they decide to retire Moss's jersey.
Who's wearing 84 now?
Oliver.
Why did they give him that number? Well, they gave it to Irv Smith Jr. too.
Yeah. They gave it to Andre Allison for that. Everybody's worn 84 since Moss has left.
And Dave, nowadays, with such a shortage in numbers, Dave, if you've noticed, teams are doubling up on some numbers, like college. Yeah. They're doing it. That's why I say, if you're going to be professional, be professional. Do things that they don't do in college. Figure out something. But I mean, that's kind of my thing with the NFL right now. They're doing too much college crap. So thanks, De Niro.
Yeah.
I love talking about the team's history. So, and somebody's got to put it out there. Sammy White was a hell of a receiver. He doesn't get the credit, but he was a hell of a receiver.
Unfortunately, he's most known for losing his head.
Yeah, he's forever known for that hit in the Super Bowl. By the way, he hung on to the ball, stayed in the game, and I think he lost his helmet again, but continued to run with the ball.
And it's not like nowadays where players don't wear their helmet tight.
No, he got hit by Jack Tatum, who 2 years later paralyzed Darryl Stingley in a preseason game. Basically, Stingley going across the middle.
How much trouble would he get in today?
He'd be fined and probably suspended, kicked out of the league.
Speaking of which, I know this is Vikings vintage history, but let's talk about the last game the Vikings played in. How the hell was that not a penalty on the Broncos player, Kareem Jackson, on that hit on Hobbs?
You know what? I've already got my. First of all, I don't even blame.
Because I wasn't able to do a post-game show. So
here's the thing with that. Why are you even calling that damn play?
Yeah.
Okay, you're down to one quarterback and one away from friggin' having Nick Mullins, who hasn't taken a snap all year, as your starting quarterback. But you call a stupid ass play like that? It's. I've already said KOC's play calling leaves much to be desired, and it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2. Are you telling us that you don't trust that offensive line to get the necessary push? Obviously, you don't.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't.
I just had to get that out there because I didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, Madison. Madison's just not a. He's a running back too. He's not a running back one.
He's the only wide receiver to have a verb named after him.
Yep. Hey, Sarah's got one here. Which Hall of Fame players are still alive and which have died? For the Vikings,
Well, thankfully, I don't want to wish death on anybody, but thankfully Nick Tingelhoff was no longer with us, and because he was in such bad shape before he died.
I talked to, you know what? I talked to Bob Lurtzum about that. They had a get together for Mick a year later. Mick didn't remember. He didn't remember it at all.
Because he had dementia and Alzheimer's.
He had dementia and Alzheimer's. He did not remember it. The only other one that's gone, Bud.
Yep.
Chris Dolman.
Yeah.
Chris Dolman. Jim Finks.
Front office guy, yep.
Front office guy. I think everybody else is still with us. I think. I could be wrong, but
yeah, Hutchison, Moss,
Eller, Page, Leary,
yep.
Carter, Moss, Randall, McDaniel, Krause.
Jim Finks and Bud Grant were the only two front office people. They're no longer with us.
Yeah, and they both played in the NFL too. So
yeah,
so they're gone. But yeah,
I think just three of them.
Yeah, it's just a three. It's just a three. Four.
Four. Sorry,
four.
Just the four.
Yeah, George. It's the reason that Fran did the talking for him was because Tingelhoff. Mick didn't even know he was there.
Yeah,
Mick was there, but he wasn't there. Matter of fact, yes, Dorpheus Foreman is still with us. Matter of fact, he's doing signings and get-togethers. But
that was painful. That was painful to watch.
Well, and you know how they interview the players during the game, and Mick, he had to be helped onto the field, and they didn't even get to they didn't interview him because what happened was he got sundowners. Was it called sundowners or whatever it's called?
I believe so.
Yeah, he got that. So, and they explained that to him, and he was already in a bad way then. So, but like he didn't even remember being in the Hall of Fame.
So was that from CTE?
CTE, old age. I mean, you know, there are people that never played a down of sports that get dementia as bad as him.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to say. It's there's a lot that goes on with the mind that we don't know about, the whole scientific thing.
Yeah.
So it could have been the sports, it could have been the football, it could have been the constant jarring of the head. Yeah. Oh yeah, John Randall's a good guy. He still lives in the Twin Cities too.
He's at a lot of Vikings events, isn't he?
Huh?
He's at a lot of the Vikings events.
Yes. Yeah, he still does a lot of team events. Matter of fact, he talks about when what's his name attacked him, Trent Dilfer. If anybody gets a chance, look up the John Randall Trent Dilfer Bucks Vikings game of 95. Trent Dilfer literally attacked John Randall near the Vikings sideline and got kicked out of the game. Trent Dilfer got kicked out of the game. First time I'd ever seen a quarterback get kicked out of a game for starting a fight with a defensive lineman.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Bob, the NFL has got so many helmets out now. You can't. It's hard to make a safer helmet unless you go back to leather. The way they are making helmets nowadays, it's like they got different models, different ways. It's basically the right now the football players are guinea pigs for new helmets. So, but yeah, they're not the same helmets like when we were in school and even in semi-pro. It was just Rydell and maybe what was it, Bikey or whatever.
Yeah, Bike, Rydell,
Shut,
Shut. Yep.
and that was about it. So
Yeah, that was pretty much it. And you just took
well,
whatever form you
Morpheus,
thought was
when
best.
Mick played, the era that Mick played in, he very seldom had anybody lined up on him, like nose to nose. He later on when the 3-4 came in, yeah, they were right on his nose. And Mick was also undersized. Mick was barely 240 when he played. So he wasn't the biggest guy. And then when you kind of got your head down all the time, you're gonna absorb some hits. But like I've said, old age could have played a lot. We get older, it happens. It does. Did football probably speed it up? It could be. I mean, if you thought Mick was bad, Bill Brown was worse. The Vikings running back, he was worse. He was in a wheelchair up until his passing, to the point where he didn't even talk to anybody. So he was worse.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad disease.
Right.
I've known someone who's had it, like, and you can see it just disappeared.
Yeah.
So.
I've seen it with my aunt, but then if you look at how Mick is, but then nowadays you got players that played in that era. Alan Page can still function, put together sentences, still got his wits about him. Like I said, it depends on the person a lot, and it depends on their genetic makeup has something to do with it too.
Yeah, if you have a history of it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah, Viscous is the new one. They they're the ones now. It's like, and you see so many helmets out there. It's like every player's got a different helmet. I know certain linemen. If you look at Ed Ingram, the Bosas, they've got that helmet that looks like kind of weird looking. And that's supposed to help. Most linemen will wear those because it helps with the attack at the point of attack, because the linemen are still button heads. You can't you can take the dirty hits out, but at the line of scrimmage you're still gonna butt heads. So that's a good question, Sarah.
Are we talking front office? We talking coaches? We talking players?
It's like, for coaches, definitely Bud. Front office, Jim Finks.
I'm gonna say Les Steckel, and I'm gonna say for front office. God, I'm drawing a brain fart right now. Dang it, Len.
Yeah, that's the COVID talking.
Yeah.
As far as players go, my God. Some will say Moss, some will say Page, some will say Tarkenton. It all differs. It just is one person's assumption. Sarah's asking, why did Dilfer attack Randall? John Randall sacked him, or was chasing him down near the Viking sideline, and Dilfer had just got rid of the ball, and Randall brought him down. Well, all of a sudden, Dilfer decides to get up and starts punching on Randall in front of the Viking bench, actually in front of Coach Green and the players. And it was a couple of Viking players that literally threw Dilfer off of Randall. Randall's just laying there like, what the hell's going on? And the referee actually threw Trent Dilfer out of the game. He was ejected. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Yes, Bob, I do remember Carl Kasulki. We remember him very well. Remember when the accident happened? Bob Lertzema, I talked to Bob a lot. Bob even told me the story. He was supposed to room with Carl Kasulki in training camp. The news had got to the Vikings. Bud had everybody come in. He told everybody news. Bob said that was the first and only time he ever saw Bud Grant break down and cry when he announced what happened to Carl Kasulki in front of the players. But yeah, I remember Carl. Carl had one of the hardest hits in Viking history, if they have one. If you look at they played the Lions in 70. Carl literally came off a blitz, and he nailed Greg Landry. You literally see Landry's head snap back. He hung onto the ball, but you could tell he was concussed, but he stayed in the game. So, oh, Sarah, boy, you are. Would you say Madison is the worst running back in Vikings history? No, we've had worse, believe it or not. I can't even. God, there's so many. What's up, Zo? There's been so many bad running backs for the Vikings.
DJ Dozier.
Yeah, DJ, that's one of them.
Got this guys. Herschel Walker's career wasn't very good with Minnesota.
So, well, I'm sorry you're, depressed too evil, but, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. There's a lot of teams that got a history that never even been to the Super Bowl, very seldom been to the playoffs. What did you
look at the Lions?
The Lions fans talk about.
The Lions are 8-2 for the first time in 60 years.
Yeah, Hey, can you go back up to De Niro Jones's comment about Tarkenton? Tarkenton is usually the first player that comes to mind. Moss is second. But it's usually either Tarkenton or Moss. Some say Chris Carter when they think of the Vikings. Me, I've always been a defensive guy and a lineman guy. So naturally, when you mention the Vikings to me, the first guys that come to mind are four, the Purple People Eaters. But if it's going to be one, it would be Alan Page. But that's, it's all one's perspective.
Yeah.
That's, Oscar Reed, Bob was a good back. He was decent. Oscar was dependable, except in the Super Bowl where he fumbled, but but yeah, he was a good back. He was our number one back there for about a year. So
yeah, the really bad running backs aren't really rememberable though, so it's hard to remember them.
Well, and Bob brings up Bud Grant's first pick was Clint Jones. Clint had some good years. Clint had injuries, which was a problem. And then he held out, which really ruined it. And once the Vikings drafted Chuck Foreman, they moved on from him. Oh, Norpheus, what about Hill Street Blues? Ed Marinero was pretty decent. He was pretty good. He was hyped. He was big time hyped coming out of, where was he? Cornell? One of those Eastern schools. He started a few games, but he had his moments. Yeah, he had his moments. But Marinero sucked in New York, Bob. When he got to New York, he sucked. He spent more time partying and being Joe Namath's wingman than running with the football. Matter of fact, he tore up his knee on Monday Night Football. And then the Jets let him go, and then he went to Chicago, and he didn't. Thanks, Norpheus. He went to Cornell, and he didn't land there. And next thing you know, he was acting. So
wasn't he in something else besides that too?
Yeah, Varsity Blues. That show about
Right.
the football school. Yeah, that was him. Um,
Sorry, Zoe.
sorry,
You stepped
Zoe,
in. You stepped in.
you in the
You're in
wrong
the wrong
show for
show.
that.
You're in the wrong show.
You in the wrong show for that, buddy.
I got that video of Trent Dilfer. I'm just trying to figure. I don't know how to play it. I'm asking Yogi how to play it.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't find it exactly. I found a video of it, and then
Right.
Peyton Manning is interviewing John Randall, and John Randall talks about how he got him to act like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, and I don't know how to play it through StreamYard, so I'm trying to figure out how to do that because I'm asking Yogi because I downloaded it, but it's not showing up in my downloads.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, Sarah. There's way worse than Madison. There's some terrible ones out there as far as running backs go for the Vikings.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, Toby Gerhardt, he was hyped coming out of where was he? Stanford?
Yes.
And he was hyped as somebody who didn't fumble. And what does he do when he gets to the NFL? He fumbles.
Yeah.
You know, but he was, I mean, he had his moments where he had his long runs too, but you know, for the most part, he just once he started fumbling the ball, he just ended up in the doghouse, and I was with Leslie Frazier. So, and then he left in free agency, and he just never stuck anywhere.
Yeah, we've had some bad ones. Some of them played better for other teams when they left.
Yeah.
Some of them were better for us, but they were still bad.
Gerhard versus CMC. Okay, are we talking in college? Yeah, they're both Stanford. CMC.
Yeah.
Yeah, CMC.
Yes,
yes, Bob. The Lions will lion. That's why I'm not.
They almost lion Sunday.
They almost lions on Sunday to the Bears. You know, which Minnesota better be careful, or they'll pull a Lions. You know, but yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's if you talked about Viking history and some of the greatest games they ever had, player wise and team wise, the Lions would be the opponent probably 80% of the time.
Charles Stackhouse was pretty bad. John Avery.
Yeah. Sarah's with the who's the worst category. Now
Jeff
she
Williams.
goes worst Q, and she puts Ponder. She wants the worst QB.
William Spencer.
Huh?
William Spencer was pretty bad for running backs.
Yeah, Willie never even carried the ball with the Vikings. He carried the ball more with the Giants. Worst quarterback in Viking history.
Josh Freeman.
Yeah.
Spurgeon Wynn.
Yeah. We got some pretty bad ones.
Right.
Ponder is bad. As a starter, but of the starters, Ponder is bad.
Potter's, yeah, but overall, he's not that far down. He's not that far down the list. There's a lot of people.
Steve Dills wasn't the best. I do remember Dills. Dills wasn't the best. Sean Salisbury was not that good.
Yeah, Bono wasn't very good either when he played for Minnesota.
Okay, Sarah, why did drafts used to go like 18 rounds or whatever? Because back then they would do it all in one day. They would draft from sun up to sundown and even into the midnight hour. They shortened it to 12 rounds in, I believe, 1977. And then with the new CBA that the players had, they shortened it to 7 rounds because of unlimited free agency.
Yeah.
At the time, I think the rounds were so long because the NFL didn't have free agency like it does now. Matter of fact, I think in order to be a free agent, I think you still had to sign with your team before you could even be traded. And it was weird.
And there was less teams too.
And there was less teams. Yeah, but it used to be. I mean, Dave Winfield, the baseball Hall of Famer that went to the University of Minnesota, played for the Padres and the Yankees. He was drafted by the Vikings in the 17th round, and he never played a down of football. Never played a down of football at the University of Minnesota. But the Vikings drafted him in round 17. But yeah, it's that's how they used to. I'd almost bring the NFL draft to like 10 rounds a team. And now Bob Norm Snead, he was good before he got here, but when he got here, he just looked like garbage. But that whole year, the Vikings as a team in 71 with the quarterbacking situation, it was a joke. It was a joke on the team. I mean, it was a running joke as a who was going to play quarterback for the Vikings on Sunday. Bud wouldn't announce who was playing quarterback that game until the night before the game.
Does Larry Miller count? Because he was.
Larry Miller?
Yeah.
No.
So Jay Walker was pretty bad.
Jay never played.
Jay Fiedler was pretty bad.
Yeah, Fiedler was not good.
Bill Kappelman was not good.
No, Koppelman wasn't. Bob Lee wasn't that good either, but he won some important games. He played better. He had that one good year in Atlanta, but he didn't have here in Minnesota is average at best.
Bubby Brister was okay. Wasn't.
I remember, but see, here's the thing. I remember Bubby more as a Steeler
Yeah.
and an Eagle than I do as a Viking.
John McCormick.
Never. I don't even know if he played it down.
Of course, then we get into people on Josh Freeman, Nick Mullins,
Yeah.
Sean Hill, Sean Mannion, Spurgeon Wynn, Norm Snead, Kelly Holcomb, George Shaw, Brooks Bollinger, Archie Manning.
Oh God, Joe Webb.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to come to Joe Webb's defense here.
Bob Berry.
Joe Webb wasn't your typical drop back quarterback. Joe Webb was a runner. He was a lot like Dobbs.
Joe Webb would be better in today's NFL than when
he would have been better in today's NFL than he was when he played. And that was only 10 years ago. And then they moved him to wide receiver because he was an athlete and they wanted to get him on the field. But yeah, that Green Bay game, that was where you talk about quarterbacks and you talk about coaches in a quarterback's ear. They just, if they had let him run, they wanted him to be this drop back quarterback, and that wasn't him. He should have been able to use his feet like he did against the Eagles in that game in 2010.
If Ponder doesn't get hurt, did they win that game? I think they do.
I think they do. Ponder was actually on a roll.
Yeah.
He was on a roll, and he lit them up the week before. But yeah, I think they would have won. Ponder actually that year in what was it, 2012, played pretty decent down the stretch, but it helped. He had AP running the ball.
Yeah.
What were the 5 best Vikings ever played? 5 best ever played? Do you mean players, game, Sarah? Which do you mean? 5 best Vikings, like players? Oh, geez. Moss, Targenin, Page. That's what, 3? Foreman. You know what? I'm going to put an offensive lineman in there, Tingelhoff. Have a good night, Dave. Happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, I would say. I mean, that's and see, Norfia's Purple People Eaters and Tark.
Like, Tony, I just sent you a message. All right, guys. We I know we usually do this show for a long time, but with me having what I have, I'm starting to get tired. So another 10 minutes or so, we'll go ahead and call it. So if you guys have any last questions or anything like that, go ahead and because I don't know if you guys noticed, but Tony's talking a lot more this show than I'm not
it's
talking
unusual
as
for
much.
me. I never talk this long.
So
I never talk this long. I'm like, Jesus Christ, people are going to get sick of hearing me.
yeah,
Bob, didn't forget about Dolman.
yeah.
Would never forget about Dolman.
So my favorite two. So I don't know if this necessarily means the greatest, but my favorite two Vikings of all time, and they're always going to be on my top 5 list, is Joey Browner and Randy Moss. I would probably say John Randall. Probably be on there as well. And then I don't know. We got to put Fran on there, and which one of the purple people you usually want to put up there, whether it's Larson, Sutherland, Page, Eller or Marshall.
Yep.
You can that whole group I would put there. It's Sutherland and Larson, the two guys that no one ever talks about.
I always say, it's the two white guys nobody talks about. The two white guys.
So, Larson was 77. What was Sutherland?
69.
69. Okay. Yeah. So those are.
Well, Norpheus. That it wasn't Sammy Winder that Joey Browner took out. It was Gerald Wilhite.
Yeah.
He ran him down and grabbed the back of his shoulder pads with one hand and tackled him that way. And he literally broke Wilhite's leg.
If Joey Browner got one hand on you, you were going down.
Yeah, the man was strong. He was a martial artist, and he was just unbelievably strong, and could play. He could play. I think Joey Browner should be in the Hall of Fame, to be honest.
I would love that. I would actually go to Canton for that.
I think Joey Browner should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he made the All-Decade team. He made All-Pro a bunch of times.
The problem was he didn't end his career too well with Tampa. So people I think that kind of has like a sour taste in their mouth. But
yeah, but a lot of people don't even remember he was in Tampa. His best years were as a Viking.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Okay, Sarah, which Viking players would you take to build a Super Bowl team for today and play by today's rules? Oh, God, today's rules? Oh, Jesus.
Well, that leaves Browner out.
That leaves Browner out. That leaves the Purple People Eaters out. That leaves shit. Moss would be the only one with today's rules. Moss would flourish in today's game.
Maybe Tarkenton.
Maybe and this NFL now would be perfect for Tarkenton.
Yeah.
But defensively, oh God, no. You had
maybe Matt Blair.
Oh, okay, Sarah. 5 best games. Wow. Oh, geez.
69 NFL championship against the Browns.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say the 69 Western Conference final the week before against the Rams, but they came from behind.
The Thanksgiving game,
98 Thanksgiving game.
You can actually do 2 games from that 98 season. The game against the Packers on Monday night and the Thursday night game. And the Thanksgiving game.
That would be 2. Oh Jesus.
What about the Colts game from last year?
No. No. First of all, you don't give a 4-win team with an interim head coach 33 points at halftime while you got 0. No.
Well, you got the 2,200-yard running a 200-yard game from Carter in the playoffs against the Niners.
Yes, that's one. Adrian Peterson's 296.
Yeah.
And see, there's so many. Damn.
It's hard to say.
So many, and I gotta think back, and I'm
the first game ever in franchise history when they beat the Bears.
Oh yeah, you got to go with that one. First game ever, they beat the Packers in '64.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, you know what? The Bills game is not mine, Frozen. It was a good game, and we won it and all, but it just was.
It had one of the best Vikings plays ever.
Yeah, I mean
the Justin Jefferson catch, but
the Justin Jefferson catch, yeah. Oh yeah, Norpheus, the playoff run in '87. Yeah, the playoff run in '87.
Yeah, they destroyed the Saints. Wasn't it like 51-3 or something?
44. They beat them 44-10 in the dome in the Super Bowl, and it was bad.
That's when the Saints had Sam Mills, Ricky Jackson, Vaughn.
They had the dome patrol.
Yeah.
Yep. They had the dome patrol, and the game started out bad for the Vikings because Kramer fumbled the snap.
Bobby Hebert was the quarterback, right?
Yeah, Bobby Hebert was a quarterback.
Yeah. They had Dalton Hilliard.
Had Ruben Mays.
Yeah.
But that's when the Viking front four, they did their thing. That was Keith Millard, and that was mostly Millard and Dolman.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, the Miracle at the Met, the Minneapolis Miracle. There's so many.
Yeah.
So many. And for me, like I said, I'd have to go year to year, and I forget. You know, as I get older, I forget about games.
Well, you definitely have to throw the first win ever as their first game. The first game they ever played, they beat Chicago 34-13.
37-13, yes.
37-13. So
you gotta put that in there.
Yeah.
First playoff win, of course, is the Rams.
The first championship, 69 game.
Yes, that is yeah. I'll tell you what though, when they beat the Cowboys in '73, they were heavy underdogs in that championship game. They were heavy underdogs. Matter of fact, the Cowboys, I mean, Schramm was already bragging everybody. He was off getting everything set to go to Houston. That's where the Super Bowl was.
The thing about this, though, was the Vikings should have never been in that position. They dominated the Saints.
Yeah.
They absolutely dominated. A typical Mike Zimmer, let him come back into the game.
Yeah. Yeah, well, here's the thing that happened. Peyton made adjustments. Zimmer didn't.
Yeah.
You know? Exactly, Norpheus. Just one before I die. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
That's all any of us ask, especially those of us that saw them lose.
That could be 70, 74, 76.
Actually, the missed ring, 87 is
98.
1. 75 is the one. And the way that went down. Because I think if they go to Super Bowl 10 against the Steelers, they probably beat the Steelers. Steelers were hurting that Super Bowl. They were hurting. So, biggest letdown? Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
where do I start?
That's a whole show.
That's a whole show. Besides the Super Bowls?
I mean, you can talk about the Cardinals game where Nathan Poole gets that touchdown in the end zone.
The Cardinals game, the Falcons championship game, that Giants game.
Yeah.
The Washington loss in 87. The Cowboy loss in 75.
Eagles in 17.
Yeah, Eagles in 17. And those are just like the postseason ones. We haven't even talked about the playoff ones. The regular
season ones. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about those.
The one year when the Panthers were 1-15 and the Vikings were the only win they had that year.
First game of the year.
Yeah.
First game of the year. They didn't win another damn game. And the funny part was they lost to Chris Winkie.
Yeah.
Who was from Minnesota. He's from St. Paul, my hometown.
I think he had like 4 or 5 career NFL wins.
If that.
Yeah.
He only had one that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he only had one that year, and that was, I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, there's so many.
It's called, that's why it's called the push off and not the Hail Mary. He pushed off Bob.
He pushed off Bob. That was
Okay.
Pearson even admitted he pushed off.
Bob, try to find some cowboy is taking over your account. You need to blink twice and let us know you're okay.
I think Too Evil hacked into him.
Yeah, exactly. What's up?
Oh man. So biggest upset, De Niro Jones. Wow. Okay, that 87 game against the Niners was an upset. That was an upset. I think the Vikings were double-digit underdogs to the Niners in that playoff game. The Cowboy game in 73. And
their very first game they ever played.
Very first game, yeah. Is a Herschel Walker the worst trade or the Ricky Waters?
No, the Herschel Walker trade, because at least Ricky was productive.
Yeah, Herschel. Not Herschel was bad because the Vikings gave up
players and picks.
Gave up picks and everything to help build. The picks are what made the Cowboys the dominant team that they were. It was the draft choices, not the veteran players. It was a draft choice.
Because they cut all the players.
Yeah, I mean, and Darren Nelson wasn't going to play in Dallas, so they traded him to the Chargers, and then Darren came back to the Vikings. But yeah, it was the Herschel Walker trade. Yeah, and for that, I would never. Yep, exactly, Norpheus.
That's why I tell Cowboy fans, you guys should give us at least a half a trophy.
Yep. Well, I tell Laker fans, you're welcome.
I tell Laker fans, you can't count the championships before they got to LA, right? Those aren't yours.
No, they aren't. Yeah, Bob, they got a couple. They got like 3.
Yeah, they got 3.
Yep.
And which just shows you that they haven't been back since.
No.
And before that trade, it was how many years? 20?
Before that trade, they went to the Super Bowl in 78.
Yeah.
88. That's like 15 years. Yeah, it was like 89, 90, 14 years.
They went in
14
88
years later. Yeah.
I thought that was 49ers and Broncos.
Yeah, we got them.
Herschel Walker is awesome as a person, but I don't think he was used right here either.
No, he wasn't used right here. He wasn't. When Denny came back, when Denny became head coach, Denny did want to keep him, but he wanted out. Yeah, I mean, put it this way: the Cowboys that year only won one game.
Yeah,
they only won one game. They unloaded Herschel, and they had a stockpile of draft choices. But they turned around. A lot of them trades, like they got Charles Haley, they got some other veteran players from other teams, so they had a lot of draft and trade collateral to work with. Whereas Minnesota had nothing, literally nothing.
Yeah, that was good. No, I'll call you tomorrow, Mom. We're probably fixing to end it here because I'm starting to go down.
Yeah, we're gonna head out. Thank you so much for the questions.
Yeah, and also if you guys, we say it every time, if you have any ideas about future shows, go ahead and put it in the comments, and we will go ahead and look at the comments.
We are open to ideas, suggestions, any topic. I mean, put it this way, we talked about the Love Boat, so really nothing's off limit.
Bob Sweet, it was Mike Lynn, and after he did the trade, he left to run the World League of American Football.
Yeah, that was Mike Lynn. That was all Mike Lynn.
Finks would have never done that trade.
No, Finks would have never did it, and if Finks did, he would have got a lot more in return.
Yeah.
If you could add any player in Vikings history, the last question, who would it be from Vikings history? Who would you add?
What, to this year's team?
Yeah. Tarkenton. I'm going to say Tarkenton.
I'm going to say Tingelhoff.
Yeah, he's better than Bradbury.
Our quarterback wouldn't be getting killed.
Yeah, well, but I say Tarkenton, you say Tingelhoff. They were the combo for years.
Yeah.
We'd be in good hands.
Right, because I would say Yeri, but our tackles are good.
The tackles are fine. I'd almost bring back – I mean, you can say Ed White. You can say Randall McDaniel.
Yeah.
Chuck Foreman. Robert Smith. You know, as
Moss.
But I mean –
imagine Moss and Jefferson together? I mean –
oh, God.
Moss, Jefferson, and Addison?
That's a friggin' video game right there. So hey, baby.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving. I just want to say I thank you everybody for joining. I'm doing this show Tony and I love doing this show, but we're also doing this show for you guys because there's no other show like this. So we usually do our shows. We have our bi-weekly show, Status of the Tennessee North. This is every weekend show for us. This is the Talking History, and then we do post-game show. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do last week. I should be able to do this week. And Tony, you also have your Tony Takes.
Yeah, I have my take. I do that usually. I do that usually after every game.
Yeah, make sure you hit the like and share and subscribe on both channels, Yogi's channel and my channel, please.
Tell your friends if they're Viking fans and they want to learn about Viking history, send them our way.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, there's no other show like this, and we enjoy doing this show. Sorry, this is a short one, but that's on me.
But thank you everybody who came into the chats, offered us questions. Thank you so much. You guys make the show worthwhile. And stick around because there's plenty to talk about.
Yep, plenty to talk about.
Skol Vikings, let's win this game. Skol Vikings, honor your name. Go get that first down, then get a touchdown. Rock 'em, sock 'em, fight, 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 fight. Go Vikings, run out the score. You'll hear us yell for more. Vikings, Skol Vikings, let's go.